Humane washing, like greenwashing, is an effort by, in this case, the meat industry to market animal products to conscientious consumers using deceptive packaging and labeling claims to promote the illusion of animal well-being while concealing the fact that most animals raised for food are raised on factory farms. Most people think natural means that animals are raised without drugs, hormones, or antibiotics. And most people also believe that all natural products should guarantee that there are no pesticides or GMOs used. In reality, all natural meat means that no artificial additives were added to the products after slaughter. Simple as that. It doesn't say anything about what happens while animals are alive. Animals can be raised in the worst possible conditions and be labeled as all natural. There's actually no legal definition for humanely raised. Meat companies are free to define what it means to be humanely raised, and unfortunately, the USDA lets them. Foster Farms is a big national poultry company, and they describe their chickens as humanely raised. And over the last 10 years, they've had multiple undercover investigations showing really egregious cruelty on their farms. Birds being scalded alive while they're slaughterhouses, or unwanted birds being suffocated in plastic bags. Really the worst conditions you can imagine. And that's perfectly legal to describe those products as humanely raised, because Foster Farms chooses to define humanely raised in a particular way, and they meet that criteria. Most people who buy organic products assume that the organic label indicates humane treatment of animals and that animals are raised on pasture. In reality, organic really just means organic feed. Now, there are some minimal provisions for animal welfare in the organic program. Ultimately, animals raised on organic farms may have only a little more space than a conventional industrial operation. And this is something that we had hoped to change. In 2015, the Secretary of Agriculture in the Obama administration had adopted a new set of rules called the Organic Livestock and Poultry Practices Rules, which would have significantly strengthened the animal welfare standards in the organic program. And unfortunately, those rules were rescinded in the Trump administration in 2016. Federal law prohibits chickens from being fed hormones. So when you see a chicken company call their products hormone-free, it's more about giving us the false impression that their products are somehow greener or healthier. It's like a paint company telling their customers that their products are lead-free, even though lead has been banned in paint since the 1970s. Like, yeah, it's lead-free, that's a true statement, but it doesn't mean anything. It means that you follow federal law. Now, hormones are more commonly used in cattle and pig farming to promote growth, or in dairy farming to increase milk production. But even for those products, when you see hormone-free, it's important to know that the USDA isn't rigorously testing products to verify those claims are true. The USDA isn't testing every product to say, yeah, we know that there isn't XYZ hormone, ractopamine, for example. So you might see chicken meat labeled as cage-free, and while that sounds good, again, it doesn't actually mean anything. That's because virtually all chickens raised for meat, except those used for breeding, are raised in large, mostly cramped barns and kept on the floor. There's no reason to think that a chicken raised for meat is going to be anything other than cage-free. For egg-laying hens, cage-free likely indicates that the hens were not raised in what are described as battery cages. Basically, these wire cages with potentially as many as a dozen or more hens crowded close together and unable to move for their entire lives. So getting hens out of battery cages is important and does reduce or can reduce their suffering. But getting hens out of battery cages is really just the first step. Battery cages are the worst of the worst, so it's good that we end that practice. But just because an egg carton is labeled cage-free doesn't mean that the hens were raised in good condition. Most consumers, I think understandably, believe that the term free range means that animals were raised outdoors on pasture. The term free range, however, has no definition for cattle or pigs, and it's only loosely defined for birds. USDA defines free range as birds given outdoor access, but they don't say how much outdoor space a bird needs or for how long the birds need to be outside every day. And in practice, a free range chicken may simply mean that a farmer installs doggy doors on the side of a 400-foot long barn and opens the doggy doors an hour a day, and some chickens may or may not go outside. From my perspective, the most deceptive thing about free range is that for most modern chickens, they've been bred to grow so fast and so large that many of them can hardly walk. So it doesn't matter really how much access they have to the outdoors. Moving more than a couple of feet may be too painful for them. So it's very unlikely that they're going to use a range and frolic on pasture if they can hardly walk. If this seems confusing, it is. There are people whose full-time job it is to make us think that their products are humane and natural. Humane washing is a marketing technique that companies use to hide the truth. Their products come from industrial operations. Now, my job would be a lot easier if I could just say, go to the store and buy this one thing, look for this one certification. I wish it were that simple. If we're really going to change how we raise animals in this country, we're going to have to be more selective and we're going to have to eat fewer of them. So when friends and family ask me, what can I do? The easiest answer I can give them is to, eat less meat, first and foremost. And second is if they are going to eat meat, to make sure that they're buying the best products possible and identify those small number of certifications that really are meaningful and verify that animals were given lives worth living.